or she is led to say is what you know we need to hear this very day. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am so glad to be with you this day for the solid foundation of planning to enter into the rhythms of the music of our faith, to be prayed over as I have prayed over you. As the leaves change color so slowly, who thought in mid-October we would have so much green still to see? The leaves are losing their moisture and they are drying and falling to the ground. I love this season as the warmth of the sun becomes a little distance and the snuggles of a colder season warm us now. And I'm so glad to be in this chapel space to worship God with you. A God who is abundant, who is the creator of life's cycles, who touches earth with beauty. My name is Amy Gall Ritchie, and I'm the Associate Pastor of Pastoral Care and Faith Formation at the Manchester Church of the Brethren. I'm also a spiritual director with Persimmon Studio. These ministry opportunities allow me to enter into the lives of many as a listening heart, a witness, an accompanier, and a co-seeker of the movement and mystery of God. Thank you for inviting me to be here with you today. I thought maybe I would be standing over there with the doors open and with the bounty of perhaps rain and wind behind me, as others have. And the threshold caught my attention for today, the doorway. The threshold seems appropriate, and maybe other preachers who have stood in the doorway to preach made mention of the power of places of demarcation. Here, not quite there, like a threshold, a coastline, a border. These things mark a place where we might pause before taking the next step. And it brings to mind for me writings and images from the Celtic Christian experience that speaks of nature and thin places, those spaces where God's Spirit roams unbridled. I brought some of my Celtic books here. Today's chapel will spend some time with the background and writings from Celtic Christianity, which is often a home for those who find God as mystics and poets through symbolism and experience. Hear this blessing of God's creation for you. You are the love of each living creature, O God. You are the warmth of the rising sun. You are the whiteness of the moon at night. You are the life of the growing earth. You are the strength of the waves of the sea. Speak to me this night, O God. Speak to me your truth. Dwell with me this day, O God. Dwell with me in love. The early Celtic church was characterized by patterns of worship and prayer under the open skies. The high standing crosses with their stone circles crossing over the traditional arms of the cross, signifying holiness and halos and eternity. They were gathering places, wild, exposed sites. Earth, sea, and sky were the temple of God. The central point is the conviction that the holy mystery of God is unbounded. And what could be a better visual to get a feel for Celtic Christianity than to preach from an open door or with the untamable autumn outside our windows? So if you find your imagination wandering away from my voice, feel free to find God outside the windows. From the Gospel of John, chapter 3, we hear these words. You should not be surprised at my saying, you must be born again. The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. In this passage, rebirth becomes the threshold, a border, a place to cross from one way of being into another. Scottish poet Kenneth White wrote, I open the book and the words fly out of the page. And the book he's referring to is creation. One Celtic teacher calls the created world the grand volume of God's utterance. Celtic Christianity calls to us with its universal language of wave, moon, wind, fire. It speaks of ancient things, earthy things, feeding spiritual bonfires as they burn in our souls as we wait for God's arrival. There is a cadence, a nuance, a subtle, soulful spirit to its liturgy, its churchyard crosses, its music. Many comb their family histories to find a vein of Celtic lineage. We learned that Christianity first appeared among the Celts in the 2nd century, if not earlier. By this point in time, they were living on the edge of the habitable world, or so Britain and Ireland were then regarded, the outer edge of the Roman Empire. Myths and traditions of Columba, Patrick, Bridget, bridged the pagan culture that was as they claimed the old culture for Christ. Desecration? Or a deepening of a sense of finding God among the rocks and amidst the storms? Maybe both. Pelagius, a Celtic contemporary and competitor to Augustine, dared to bring forth an ideal that God is within all things, and that what is deepest within us and creation is the image of God. Augustine took exception with this, and Pelagius lost, a victim of the triumphal Roman paradigm where Peter is the rock and the church's authority would only be known through that lineage. Again, in the 16th century, the Celtic tradition met with resistance. The reciting of their patterned prayers, long a cultural method of passing down value and belief, was discouraged and even banned. They were too closely aligned with their earthy origins and were out of sync with the stylized and approved prayers of the church. They were regarded as pantheistic and pagan. They probably were. And yet God is found in the rustling grass, the sighing, swaying trees, the call of birds, and the day-by-day shifting from spring into summer, into autumn, into winter. I sometimes think how sad must be the creator of light and dark, world and water, animal and human, that we cannot allow ourselves to know the Holy One through what has been wrought by holy imagination. Celtic Christianity is a theology born of geography and place, The coastlines around Ireland, Scotland, and Britain are rugged, rocky, wild, and dangerous. I wonder how many of you, and you can raise your hands, have been to Great Britain and have seen some of those coastlines. This is where the eyes and hearts watch from the coasts, holding vigil for husband and neighbors to return from the sea. Maybe yes, maybe no. When Celtic liturgy speaks of the strength of the wave, it is speaking of something that can hold you aloft or drag you under. Life can end in a single swell of the sea. Celtic Christianity is rooted amidst rugged rocks, pelting sand, salt on the tongue, wind whipping hair and clothing, the green, craggy pastures too rocky to cultivate, yet vast enough to gaze upon moon and stars and the whole cosmos under the cover of night. It is in these images of rough-hewn living that I often find my soul's voice. I like hard work that leaves dirt under the nails and sweat on the skin and hair tousled. I'm a farm girl brought up with grit and grease by a dad who saw land as a geological story of holy wonder. Like the geographical theology of the Celts, it's a Hoosier theology that understood holy time in the form of glacial movement, bringing clay and black dirt and sand that ended up on one single farm that he owned. Dad and the Celts knew that God is within this creation that is earthy and organic, full of life and death, cycles and stillnesses. The Celtic coastline of my mind's eye leads me to the divine, the high King of heaven, the creator of earth and sky. Who here has crossed the English Channel and has seen the chalky white cliffs of Dover? They are a breathtaking wall, a seemingly unscalable border, a threshold between fluid sea and solid land, continent and island. Images like the cliffs of Dover inform and give shape to the language of faith and belief for the Celtic Christians. How many of you have slowed your cars to see a freshly turned field in the spring or harvesting machinery in the fall? Or the high rise of impossibly engineered buildings built on the swamplands of Chicago? How does the landscape where you grew up inform your understanding of where God is, who God is, and that God inhabits the unbelievable, the mundane, the amazing natural world around us? Canadian writer J. Philip Newell, of Scottish descent, whose writings, teachings, and contemplative ministry has long been held in Scotland and on the island of Iona, has done much to bring the ancient and contemporary Celtic Christianity to the foreground once again. His writings interpret the poetics of a people from long ago, turning words like smoring and kindling into words that can enter into our own theological and faith language. He hangs his hat on the compilation work of Alexander Carmichael in the Carmina Gadelica and the 20th century writings of George MacLeod, the founder of modern-day Iona. Your own chaplain Laura has lived in this far-away island Celtic community. No doubt she has shared of her first-hand accounts of the Celtic tradition far better than I can do. While I have been to Britain, I lean heavily not on experience, but on bookish imagination, academic curiosity. leaning on the way poetry can penetrate and make us feel as if we are experiencing it ourselves. We learn from all these writers of the gift of the Celtic Christians, an integration and harmonizing of life and prayer, belief and living. They call upon the saints, angels, Mother Mary, the Holy Trinity, all of life. Every action, every fire, every toothache becomes an opening toward God, the joining of heaven on earth. MacLeod writes, Jesus is vibrant in the material world, not just in the spiritual world. There is no plant in the ground but tells of your beauty, O Christ. There is no creature on the earth, there is no life in the sea, but proclaims your goodness. There is no bird on the wing, there is no star in the sky, there is nothing beneath the sun, but is full of your blessing. Lighten my understanding of your presence all around, O Christ. Kindle my will to be caring for creation. One of the sights that I would like to see with my own eyes one day and touch with my own fingertips is Newgrange in Ireland, that ancient ceremonial mound that catches the rising sun at the winter solstice. Deep at its core, through a stony hallway runs the light, landing in a bowl carved of stone. The light of the sun lands perfectly. On the surface are images called triskelions. I have one here, this image. Perhaps you have seen it before. They are etched over and over and over again on the outside of the stone and inside that place. The pre-Christian Celts thought in threes. They wrote in threes. They etched in threes. And when Christianity arrived, they could believe in the Trinity, art and language and rhythm to speak of all things. Not only does the language of the Celtic Christians offer us the poetics of three, but it offers the poetics of many and multitudes. If we ask for God's blessing for a few things, why stop there? Why not include the whole of creation, all we can see, all we can touch, what we encounter each day? Repetition, rhythm, turning over every rock of possible blessing, possible protection, possible connection to God, as if they are kneading their lives to the beat of prayer. I am bending my knee in the eye of the God who created me, in the eye of the Son who died for me, in the eye of the Spirit who moves me in love and in desire, for the many gifts you have bestowed on me each day and night, each sea and land, each weather fair, each calm, each wild. Thanks be to you, O God. Again, Celtic writer Philip Newell wants us to consider the spirituality of the Celtic Christians with an understanding that it is not a doctrine to be learned, but something to be felt. He tells us that it is an experience of the presence, a hymn that fills the whole universe, a melody that continues whether we are listening or not. A melody that continues whether we are listening or not. The resounding presence of God goes on and on for the sheer joy of it, like waves upon the shore. Belief is experienced rather than defined. Hear this Celtic morning prayer that would have been recited, we can imagine, just as legs swung from the bed at the early light of dawn and feet slip into slippers, but before the person stands up. Bless to me, O God, my soul and my body. Bless to me, O God, my belief and my condition. Bless to me, O God, my heart and my speech. And bless to me, O God, the handling of my hand. Strength and busyness of morning, habit and temper of modesty, force and wisdom of thought, and thine own path, O God of virtues. Till I go to sleep this night, thine own path, O God of virtues, till I go to sleep this night. There are coastlines and thresholds all around us, experiences where two opposing things encounter one another, sand and sea. Experience that make us pause before taking the next step. Sleep and waking, hunger and having our fill, labor and rest, doing and napping, our coming and our going. These are spaces where heaven and earth meet, where the Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer remind us that they are always with us. Spaces of change that awaken us out of routine to see anew. These spaces where heaven and earth meet are demarcations of peril or life. All around us are raw realities marked by poverty, inequality, levees breaking, ice caps melting, sneaky viruses upending the whole pattern of living on this earth. Life is breathtakingly real and dangerous, rough and unknown, here all around us. The writings from the Celtic Christian tradition pull us to those raw edges to remind us that God is here, especially here in the pain, in the loss, in the cold, in the wildness of what we cannot control. And if you can visualize with me, just as men and women and children walk away from the symbolic, bitter, dangerous, cold coasts back into a warm home and hearth to start the day, we also find God in the daily kindling of our spirit's fire as we prepare to be made new, as we make our beds, wash a dish, sing a vesper, snore in sleep. They have a prayer blessing for everything, and I bet there is something for the one who snores. God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, the mysterious three-in-one, run rampant in this place of our living, as if they are the wind blowing here and there in the very things we don't want to look at, and in the things that make up each moment of our life. What if today you go and write your own liturgies of three, of many, of limitless requests, of blessings that recognize your troubles, your worries, writing that allows you to go into the hardest and darkest parts of your thinking, writing that allows you to experience God in the rough-hewn daily burlap of our living. The prayers of the Celtic Christians took the ground of daily living, health and illness, plenty and want, sprains, gout, milking, birth, and turned them into touchstones, coastlines, thresholds for the meeting of heaven and earth. They infuse their poetry of lived belief, not with some pithy attitude of gratitude, but blessing of all things, a belief that when you speak in supplication, something holy happens. Blessing that does not gloss over or turn away from what is hard and concerning, disappointing or masked. Blessing that makes the dullest day a prayer. Blessing that makes the everyday task a special moment. Blessing that makes a fearsome reality endurable. blessings which seek the God of all, the light of Christ, the wind of the Spirit to come and take part in our living, our glorious, broken, incredible living. All of life becomes a touchstone, a threshold of blessing, as all of life, all of the material world is infused with the heartbeat of God. As you return to your rooms, moving down corridors, what are you headed to? What do your hands touch? What liturgy of your daily experience is waiting to be written as a blessing? How will you infuse your day with God's wondrous presence? To close, receive this benediction written in the Celtic style that I'll call a blessing for the day at Timbercrest. Bless, O God, the halls that connect. Bless, O God, the rooms that are homes. Bless, O God, those that bring care in this place in our lives for all good. Bless, O Christ, the laughter of friends. Bless, O Christ, the curious questions. Bless, O Christ, the tears of emotions welling up within our vision. Bless, O Spirit, the aching movement of our bodies. Bless, O Spirit, the faith in our hearts. Bless, O Spirit, the hope for tomorrow, for restoration, wholeness, and the sacred mystery that is already, for restoration, wholeness, and the sacred mystery. Thanks be to God. Amen.